So we got Nick Lord on here, who is like it's just a fascinating story, to be honest with you, um, because I'm so intrigued by student athletes that start their own business in college. I just think you guys are there's a whole level, another level of special and different and grinders and creative and folks that are you're just you know adverse to any type of risk. We want to hear the story. Just start off on your background from college and really that startup story, the good stuff, the bad stuff.
I grew up in Lancaster, Pennsylvania. Currently live in Philadelphia. Went to a small school in Pennsylvania called Gettysburg College. Graduated in 2020. I was a Division III basketball player there. So obviously knew a little bit about the whole college athletes being paid narrative. I started my very first company when I was in college. It was actually in the music industry. Started that my freshman year. It was going pretty well. I ended up attracting a couple thousand users. Tried to raise some money for it. But as you probably guessed, no one's going to really give you money if you're a full-time student and a full-time athlete. So I ended up kind of dropping that there because I wasn't ready to take that step in my life yet. But eventually knew I was going to get into entrepreneurship at some point in my career. So after my senior season finished, I was trying to figure out, what I was going to do next in my life, and ended up, coming together with one of my best buddies from college. We started a company in the college recruiting realm, connecting high school athletes with college coaches. A couple months into that business, realized it was probably one of the most saturated markets I could have gotten myself into. Tried to figure out how I could really pivot the business from that point. And that was when I heard about the rumors about, potential for college athletes to begin monetizing their NIL. And I started doing some research on the industry. I actually had an intern who was at the University of Michigan, and she introduced me to her chief compliance officer at the University of Michigan. And I started talking to him about what I was doing with recruiting and how I heard about this NIL space. And I was trying to tie the two together somehow. Realized there was like a pretty gray area between recruiting and NIL. So I had to kind of pick a side there. Around that time, right when I had that conversation, I completely pivoted the business into that. He ended up quitting his job pretty right off the bat and coming on full time with me. At that same time, met my other co-founder kind of in a really odd way. I had an advisor who was advising me since the beginning of when I was doing the recruiting startup. And he met this other guy through a random Slack group. They have those like networking Slack groups all over the place. And he had this guy that was in California. He was the CTO at a Fortune 500 and was looking to get back up in the startup world. He had been, and he ended up connecting the two. We were supposed to chat for like 15, 20 minutes, ended up staying on the phone for 3.5 hours. And a couple days later, decided to quit his job and join up with me. So that was pretty much a year before NIL became a thing. So we started building our business pretty early on in the life cycle. Like to think we were one of the first companies, in the space. Bootstrapped completely. The beginning of our business, me and my co-founder Stan, who's the guy out in California, launched it on July 1st of 2021 when the NIL rules officially came into play, and grinding through that. It was an interesting kind of time period. We had a MVP. We didn't really have a name for ourselves. We didn't know what we were really doing. We didn't know what NIL was going to be. So it was kind of just a giant risk we had to take when starting a business in this industry, and took those first few months to really kind of hone in on what we were going to do longer term, and did as much research as possible on the industry. Luckily, got in touch with a couple of investors and were able to raise a seed round of funding, about 2.5 million, closed that the end of last year.
The timing in life is everything, right? And, you were able to capitalize on it. But what I'm really curious about is what's your feelings about the two businesses that you started prior to this? Do you feel like if you didn't go through that process and learning and kind of knowing the pace of it, do you think you would have been able to land where you are right now?
Absolutely not. No, even the first business I started, it was only me and one other guy, but I was still able to learn so much about starting a business in general, what it means to really be an entrepreneur and how much time and effort it takes. I think the term entrepreneur and founder is kind of glorified a little bit. People think it's like this great thing, but it's a grind. Like it is really hard on a daily basis, and you have to put a lot of time in and a lot of effort with it. So definitely those two experiences I learned so much from, and I took a lot of those learnings into being able to build this business. But the biggest thing that I definitely learned was being able to surround yourself with the right people. Because as a first time founder, you have no idea what you're doing.
Yeah.
So I made it a kind of a point for me to not only bring in co-founders that had been through it before, but also, an advisory board that would be able to help me at kind of each part of the business. And I built out a pretty big advisory board, which a lot of founders don't actually do, it doesn't seem like, but I wanted someone in each aspect of the business that could kind of help me along and teach me as I, hopefully scaled.
You use the word entrepreneur. To me, entrepreneur is a title that you earn. It's just not because you own a business. Like if you're able to support other people besides yourself for a sustainable amount of time, not just a year or two, I mean, decades, then you're an entrepreneur. Those are, and then you could do it over again and over again and over again. And part of which is you're already getting those tattoos of losses, and you need those losses, right? You don't like them. They're expensive and they hurt the ego, but it's part of it. And, the interesting thing is there's so many people that say, the losses because it's educational and, you learn so much. It's a bunch of bullshit. It is, but freaking, it doesn't help any bit. You'll learn more of getting married, having family, raising kids and going through. You learn more that way than you do missing a business, because when businesses close down, sometimes you just miss it. You're sometimes one phone call, one connection, one investor away from making it. So it's not sometimes that there's so much luck involved and timing involved, skill and talent go into it. But so it's like, you learn something, but shit, I could gamble that. And what did I learn from gambling on the wrong thing? I don't have any control over that. So anyways, what are those things that you learned? Not just about the business, what did you learn about yourself? When you start a business, you think you have ideas and you think it's going to work. But what did you learn about yourself on your personal skill sets, your resiliency, your persistent, like your mindset, and your guts and courage to do this? Did you find out a little bit more about yourself that you didn't know before?
Yeah, I mean, that's a loaded question for sure. But I think I learned so much throughout the 3 different businesses that I've been involved in. I think one of the things is that one day things could go completely really well. Everything could be going your way. The next day it could be, a shit show. And you have to learn to be able to kind of be resilient and get over those humps and be able to kind of keep a steady mindset throughout the whole process and the whole business, so that you don't get kind of construed one way or the other. And that allows you to kind of grow the business longer term. Another thing I mentioned a little bit before is you don't know everything. So you got to surround yourself with the people that do. You got to be willing to ask a lot of questions. When I first started my business, I probably DM'd every single person you could ever think of on LinkedIn, and tried to set up calls, and not everyone responded, but every once in a while someone did, and they'd be willing to get on a call with me, and I'd just try to learn. You got to be willing to learn as much as you possibly can from different people who have been through the ringer before, and have built businesses, and especially businesses in your industry. So I spent a lot of time reaching out to sports industry professionals, trying to learn what their lifestyle was like, where they had failed in the past and what they learned from it, and how I could apply that to potentially what I was doing. I think the third is just being willing to adapt. You're going to, especially specifically with this NIL industry that I'm in, no one had any expectation about what this could be. So every day is new things pop up, and you got to be willing to adapt and kind of pivot your business into something that's going to work longer term, because what you thought about at the beginning might not even be close to relevant now.
What do you say to student athletes right now that are trying to start their own business or have an idea about their own business? What are some of the resources? Because I don't think there's ever a better time than being in college, right? Yeah. You got a place to live, you got food down the street or whatever, and you got resources with professors and alums that have seed capital money and access to all of the resources that you need, mentors, advisors. What do you say to them, those that are trying to figure out this NIL space, that maybe they're not going to be an influencer, or they're a D2, D3 skid, but they got this great idea on how to make an impact in the world or whatever? What's that advice that now that maybe you wish someone told you back then? What should they do? What's their first step?
Number one is just, having the ability to reach out to anyone, and that confidence to reach out to anyone in your network. Utilize your alumni network. Like in my university, I went to a really small school, it's Gettysburg College. We had like 2,500 people, but our alumni network was incredible. There were so many people within sports that I reached out to, and I had no idea that they even existed. So I went to our career development office, and I figured out who I could potentially reach out to. I figured out what resources the schools offered in terms of me getting in touch with those people. And some of them, they didn't really go anywhere. Other ones, they helped me a lot. And those conversations led to other conversations. I think the term network is your net worth is so true. You never know where one conversation can get you. And that's kind of, I think the network is the biggest thing, and being able to just have that confidence to reach out to people and not being afraid to, care about what other people think.
No, that's true. You have to be that way to be a founder, especially your family and friends, right?
Absolutely.
You want them to support you. So let's talk about NoCap. How did you come up with a name? What's the platform? If I'm a student athlete watching, how do I get involved? If I'm a brand manager, how do I get involved? So let's talk about NoCap. So how did you come up with the name?
The name kind of happened inadvertently. The original name of our company was Match You. But I got a cease and desist letter from Match.com that we were stealing their name. So I had to quickly come up with something else. And I was sitting at a table with a bunch of my buddies the one day. I was trying to figure out how I was going to change the name of the company, and one of my friends said NoCap, because that's kind of like a Gen Z saying that people say all the time. And it also kind of applies to the NIL industry, because there's no cap on the amount of opportunities you can have as an athlete. So I thought it resonated really well. And
it's a great name, by the way.
Yeah, it gets a lot of love. I'm hoping we can turn it into a household name someday. In terms of what we do, we've made so many pivots at this point, just with NIL being so new and not knowing what to expect. Like when we really originally started our business, we were mainly focused on helping universities with compliance. So that's where we're really focused now, is helping athletes and mainly helping brands execute these larger scale marketing campaigns, so helping the mid to larger scale brands, agencies, other influence providers put together these campaigns where they can include athletes and kind of recognize the power that athletes have. And we use technology to kind of scale those activations. So that's kind of where we're at right now. I think because NIL is so much more than one-off brand deals all over the place, and working with the local business, or working with Coca-Cola or Pepsi or whatever. It's connecting them with other opportunities beyond that. So jobs, internships, charity opportunities, some of what you're working on with the cause marketing. I think that's awesome. Entrepreneurship opportunities, getting investment into your ideas, and helping, student athletes build out the businesses that they have dreams of and have ideas for. So that's kind of where we really want to eventually go longer term. But right now,
so talk about just let's unpack that a little bit more. So if I'm a non-Power 5 student athlete, and I'm getting a little bit frustrated because brands aren't picking me up, I don't have the following that a lot of people. Where do you see that next level? Like, how do you see that chipping down a little bit more? So, and how do you guys going to kind of facilitate that?
Even already, we've done all sorts of campaigns involving athletes you wouldn't even expect to be in NIL deals so far. Like all of our deals haven't been with the 1% of athletes. I think it's really, NIL is more about brands realizing the impact that the campaign has, as opposed to just the social media presence that these athletes have. I'll give an example, like College Hunks. They're a huge franchise. We've done like probably 10 deals with them where they're sponsoring entire teams. They're sponsoring parts of teams, multiple athletes, with not crazy Instagram followings or anything. And I think it's really about the story that you can tell, and the PR aspect of it as well.
How important do you think talent acquisition is going to play a role in this whole thing?
Oh, I think it's massive. I think athletes have an opportunity. If they're not getting direct deals, they can reach out to brands and offer to promote them or do something in exchange for them. Do cause marketing campaigns like you're working on, and kind of getting that early. NIL is like more of a way to get early exposure to these companies that are eventually going to be hiring. And obviously most athletes aren't going to go pro. So if you can build that relationship really early on and show kind of your entrepreneurial spirit and how you work and kind of how you carry yourself, that relationship that you started early on in college is going to transition really well to when you want to get a job after school. And that relationship might turn into a job opportunity or internship opportunity
No better test, right? And you get a little bit of a 2-year window or year window of an internship that you get paid to do from your dorm room and your campus, and you better clean it up, right?
Absolutely.
So how do people get a hold of you? Or if how they get onto your platform, where do they go?
Yeah, nocapsports.io. It's free sign up. Pretty easy to get in touch with our team. Our platform. We're actually launching a completely new revamped platform within the next month that we're really excited about. So hoping to put that in the hands of athletes in a couple of weeks.
Well, student startups, man, you were right there with it. You caught the wave at the right time, and you're talented, you're smart, you know what you're doing. You built out something. This is your third, right? Your third startup. And how old are you? 22, 23?
Just turned 25. Actually, I'm a little old for my grade.
Well, you don't look a day over 24 there, Nick.
Thanks, man.
Yeah. So that's Nick Lord over there. I'm Rob Thompson. You're watching MyConnectSports.com, and we'll see you next time. This is episode 2 of season number 1. See you later, everybody. Thanks for joining.